Why women over 60 can't find their size anymore. If you're a woman over 60 who used to know your size and now finds yourself standing in a fitting room holding 3 different numbers, none of which fit the way they should, this is why. In 1939, researchers working under a federal grant began measuring women's bodies across 7 states in America. The lead researchers on that project were Ruth O'Brien and William Shelton, working under a grant from the Works Progress Administration. Over 3 years, they recorded 58 separate measurements on nearly 15,000 women, from waist circumference to the length of the neck, and dozens of points in between. By 1953, the findings went to the clothing industry for comment. The goal was simple: build one reliable size chart the whole country could use. The study only measured white women. A small number of other women were measured as well, but their numbers were left out of the final published results. Whatever standard eventually came from this data was built to represent only part of the population it claimed to describe, and no one who later wore the sizes derived from it was ever told that going in. The original recommendation was also too complicated to manufacture. It called for 9 separate sizes for every single bust measurement, sorted by height and by girth, which no factory could realistically produce at scale. So in 1958, the National Bureau of Standards started over. They kept the underlying numbers, but built an entirely new system around one assumption: that a woman's body forms an hourglass, and that her bust measurement alone can tell you everything else about her shape. People inside the industry already knew this particular data set had been picked apart and criticized. They adopted it anyway. Published as Commercial Standard 215-58, it became the first sizing system to carry the government's name, running from size 8 to size 38, with separate ranges called misses and women's for different body types, plus petite and tall variations within each. A later revision, meant to bring the numbers up to date, folded in measurements taken from women who had served in the military. A magazine investigation pointed out the obvious problem years afterward. Military service selects for fitness. These were some of the most physically capable women in the country, and their bodies were now shaping a standard meant to describe everyone. By 1970, the government made the whole standard voluntary. Manufacturers could follow it or ignore it. Many started to ignore it. In 1983, the standard was withdrawn completely. The misses and women's category labels disappeared from most size charts along with it, leaving nothing but a number on a tag, stripped of the body type it was ever meant to describe. An industry group tried again in 1995 with a new voluntary standard, ASTM-D 5585, built around a hypothetical woman, 5'5", in what the trade still calls the Mrs. figure type. That standard has been revised, most recently in 2021, and it exists today. Almost nobody follows it. Meanwhile, the gap between the data and reality kept widening. In 2002, a consortium of apparel companies and researchers launched a project called Size USA, the largest body measurement study since the original 1939 effort. Using 3-dimensional body scanning technology, they measured over 10,000 women across the country. What they found confirmed what women had already figured out on their own. American women's bodies had changed substantially in shape and proportion since the 1950s, and the clothing industry's assumptions had not changed with them. After the government standard disappeared, brands were free to build whatever chart served them best. Retailers began shrinking the numbers on the tag, while leaving the actual garment close to the same size, a practice that picked up through the 1980s and never really stopped. A dress that would have measured a size 16 under the old federal chart could be labeled a size 4 somewhere else, with nothing about the fabric or the cut telling a shopper the difference until she tried it on. Home sewing patterns took a different path entirely. Several of the major pattern companies have kept the same base body measurements since the mid-1960s, which is part of why a vintage sewing pattern can still fit a woman more predictably than a rack of ready-to-wear in the same stated size. But the deeper reason a size 10 in one store fits nothing like a size 10 in another has less to do with vanity and more to do with how a garment gets built in the first place. Every clothing line starts with one person, a fit model, whose body becomes the template for that entire size range. Designers drape and pin and adjust the fabric directly on this one body until the sample fits the way they want. Once that sample size is approved, a separate process called grading takes over, and grading does not redesign the garment for every new size. It takes the exact proportions of that one fit model and scales them mathematically up and down, longer through the sleeve, wider through the hip, following ratios that were fixed the moment the sample was signed off. This matters because a body does not change shape the way a photograph changes size when you resize it on a screen. A woman who gains weight around her waist does not become a slightly larger version of her 30-year-old self. Her proportions move in a different direction entirely. For women over 60, this is especially true. The hormonal shifts that come with menopause redistribute weight differently than simple aging does, typically moving mass toward the midsection while changing shoulder and hip ratios in ways that no graded pattern accounts for. A woman's body at 60 carries weight differently than at 30, and the distance between those two shapes is not something a mathematical scale can bridge. A graded pattern has no way to account for that. It can only preserve the original fit model shape at every size indefinitely. So when a woman in her 60s finds that a size which fit her for decades suddenly sits wrong across the shoulders or pulls strangely at the waist, the size has not necessarily failed her. The pattern was built around a body that was never hers, and it has been graded further and further from her actual proportions since the day she stopped closely resembling whichever fit model that particular brand happened to choose. Most fit models share a similar profile. Industry sources describe the standard fit model as roughly a size 8 and generally under 35 years old. Every larger and every smaller size on that brand's rack descends from that one body, not from any research into how a woman in her 60s or a fuller figure or a petite frame is actually built. One patent filing on apparel sizing went as far as to note that shoppers often stay loyal to a single manufacturer for reasons that have nothing to do with price or style. The brand's fit model simply happens to share their particular body configuration. Everyone else, using the exact same size label, is fitting herself against someone else's body entirely. There is no law requiring a manufacturer to disclose whose body their sizing is built around, and none has ever needed one. The number on the tag looks like a fact, printed and fixed. It has always been a choice, made once by someone whose body most customers will never see or hear about.